The Badge to the Bone podcast contains adult language, mature themes, psychological nudity. Viewer discretion is advised. The opinions expressed here are ours and ours alone. Buckle up.
All right, welcome back to Badge to the Bone. I'm Denny,
I'm Al.
and we are here for another episode, Al.
Yes, let's get on it.
Let's do it.
I've given up on society, up on my family, up on your social disease. I've given up on the industry, up on democracy. Done with all your hypocrisy.
Al,
Denny, we're back.
we are back.
You over your crud?
No, as you can tell, I've still got this shit. It won't go away.
It's Denny and his crud that was the reason that our much anticipated, at least I anticipated it, Halloween episode was delayed.
I know we didn't
But-
get to get it out at Halloween.
Right. But, since Denny is the technical brains of this operation,
Not technical brains, technical monkey, maybe.
but, yeah, so you're back. Are you feeling better?
I'm feeling better, other than I can't get rid of the cough and the congestion, and hopefully I won't be hacking like crazy for this, but I probably will. But, well, the hell with it, whatever. The show must go on.
Bourbon will fix that.
Yeah, it'll probably knock me out.
Yeah, that's good too.
See, there we go. So we're talking about it, making me cough.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really looking forward to tonight's episode.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this one amongst ourselves for a while.
We've got an awesome guest tonight.
Yeah. So you want to tell our listening audience
Yeah,
who we have with us tonight?
Yeah. So this is another guest that I met at the trauma conference that DCJS does. And while I was there, met Matt Griffin, who presented at the conference. And Matt is a U.S. Navy veteran. He was Virginia Beach PD, and it is, I believe I'm pronouncing it, Keene, New Hampshire PD. He did a lot of undercover. Well, that was pretty much his forte, was undercover narcotics work. And I know at one point, I think he was assigned to the Attorney General Task Force. So, and I think that's how he got linked up with Chris. I believe he taught a lot of narcotics type classes for DCJS. And then, of course, he got tapped to come to the trauma conference. So he wrote a book called The Journey to Midnight.
Yeah.
And, hearing his story was awesome. One, he's just awesome in general, and it was just a great presentation. But hearing that story, it really, it's like a wow. I said to me, I said, he's got to come on the podcast.
I know when you went, and again, unfortunately, I couldn't make it down there. But when you came back, he was on that very, very short list of absolute must-haves.
Oh yeah, and luckily we got to
So-
speak for a little bit. So I was like, oh yeah. I mean, and his personality, I'm like, oh yeah, he's a absolute fit for this clown show. But without any further, I'll go ahead and introduce our guest here. Well, I introduced him, but I'll welcome our guest, Matt Griffin. Matt, welcome to Badge to the Bone.
Yes, Danny. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Looking forward to this. I know we had to carve out this time. We went back and forth and trying to find a date and a time and everything else, man. So I am so blessed and grateful to be here. And guys, you guys are awesome, man. So looking forward to this.
Oh, it is so great to have you, man.
Yeah, it is, and it's tough to carve it out. I know you're busy, and and life is busy in general. But I'm definitely glad that we were blessed to get this moment here. So.
That's it. Looking forward to this.
But so Matt, I gave a little bit of info, and I think I got everything right, but that's probably just scratching the surface of your career and your tenure and stuff. But give us a little bit of background about your career.
Yeah, man. So I mean, you hit the nail on the head. So, retired from law enforcement in 2017, and my career, just like you said, was really kind of revolved around narcotics. And so when I left law enforcement, there's, we could talk for a long time about how I left for law enforcement. Those are some things that are in the book and everything else. But I made a promise to myself and to my former partner and one of my best friends, Brian, who isn't with us anymore. And I said, if no matter what, every time I train law enforcement, I'll end with a story about us. And so, and that's been true to this day. So for the last almost just over 6 years, whether it was an 8-hour presentation, whether it was a 4-hour webinar, no matter what it was, I'd always end with a story about law enforcement suicide and mental health and resiliency. And that's how I met Chris. He happened to sit in the audience of one of my fighting fentanyl presentations or basic narcotics or something like that. And and he said, Matt, I got to have you at the trauma conference. And so it was just a perfect fit. And yeah.
Outstanding. Now, when you're talking about law enforcement suicide,
Mhm.
so obviously your presentation and your book talks about struggles you have or
Yeah.
have had. And again, a pretty tremendous story. But give us some information on that. Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, man. So, you know, it's funny, man. Like, for most of my career, like, and again, I was a search and rescue swimmer in the Navy, and so I was always been in good shape. I was, I got the scholarship to go to a prestigious private high school in northern New Jersey called Morristown Beard, and really like super blessed to have that opportunity. Big sports guy and everything else, and played lacrosse and football, and went into the Navy and wound up being a search and rescue swimmer. And so just from you're always kind of taught that alpha male type of persona, and where that kind of transitioned into Virginia Beach Police Department. And after FTO phase, my first day on my own, I was working shore drive, which is like what they call 330 zone. And I remember midday I got a call for a 21-year-old kid who had committed suicide. And at that time in Virginia Beach, we had to make sure that there was nothing suspicious about the body, right? So I get to the scene, and again, I'm 23, 24 years old. I'm in great shape, and you guys remember that day, like the first time that you drive by yourself. There's nobody sitting next to you. You don't have to ask anybody to go take a shit.
Good
Am I allowed to
kid.
curse?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like you don't have to ask anybody to go take a shit. You don't have to ask, like you can just make the right turn without your blinker on and not like have it affect your DOR. And so like it was just that day, and midday the call came out to head down to Shore Drive for this 21-year-old kid that committed suicide, and I'll never forget it. And I get there, it's on the second floor, and I go up there, and the kid had stripped down. The 21-year-old kid had stripped down naked, and he had hung himself. I'm sorry, he had shot himself. I apologize. And he had shot himself, and so underneath him, like we had to move the body around to make sure that there was nothing suspicious about it. And so I moved the body around, and I see the edge of what looked like a suicide note. And as I'm looking at the suicide note, I realized that the blood from his suicide had wiped away everything that he had tried to say on the suicide note, right? And so I remember how that just sat with me. And I get done with my shift for the day, and I go home that night, and I'm talking to my wife at the time, my boy's mother, and she's like, "How's your first day on your own?" I'm like, it was pretty good. It was pretty uneventful except for this one call." And I told her about it, and and that night, like I didn't have nightmares or anything, but like it just bothered me. I'm like, what did this kid want to say to the world before he took his life? And so I wound up just kind of like just marinated on it and just thinking about it. And so the next day I go into work, and I get into my cruiser, and I'm grabbing a coffee, and I see one of my senior guys out there, and I said, "Mock, like this is like something's bothering me." And he's like, "What's up, Griff?" I said, that suicide yesterday. I said, this kid had written his suicide note, and he wanted to say something to the world, and the blood, wiped it away. And I said, it just really bothers me. And I'll never forget it. He looked at me and he said, "If you're not strong enough to see it, then this isn't the job for you." And he turned to walk and got in his cruiser and drove away. And and yeah, and that was and again, guys, like I'm a young, impressionable. I've never been a cop before, so I'm through the academy, I'm through the FTO phase. All I've ever done is like mirror what I thought was good law enforcement, what good training was, and I latched on to people who I thought were solid, great cops. And this is a guy that I thought was a solid, great cop. And so I said to myself, okay, I guess that's how we're supposed to act.
Mm.
And so, and again, like, so, now we fast forward a couple years, and I'm gonna get in kind of, into the baby, but, and this is what hurt. So I take that mentality and I move forward, and you guys know as well as I do, when things build up and you just keep thinking about it and you don't release it, right? You wind up coping, and whatever that coping mechanism is, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's gym, whether it's, whatever it is, like the coping method is going to fail at some point. And so, fast forward a couple of years, and it's Christmas Eve of 2004 going into 2005, and I'm driving on Hampshire Drive, which is in the 3rd precinct of Virginia Beach. And on the right side of the road, I see my buddy Ben and his son playing in the front yard. And so I'm ecstatic, right? So like I pull over, I'm like, yo, what's up, man? How's it going? Everything's good. He's like, you're a cop now. I said, yeah. And so he got stationed at Norfolk. He's at the Norfolk Naval Station. He's like, hey, meet Benny Jr., my 2.5-year-old. He's like, matter of fact, come inside. I want you to meet Brittany. So we go inside. I meet Brittany. We talk. We connect for a little bit. He goes, what are you doing tomorrow for Christmas? I said, man, I got to work. I'm a young badge. I'm brand new out here. And he said, well, why don't you come by and get you a plate? I said, yeah, I'll definitely do that. And so I did. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember, meeting everybody, but most of all, I remember little Benny Jr. in their kitchen. He was up on the step stool and he's cutting up Christmas cookies. And he looked at me with my badge and my gun. He's like, Mr. Griffin or Mr. Matter, are you a police officer? And I said, yeah. And I remember him saying, he goes, that's so cool. And, I always take that with me. And so, that was just a great day. And so we go into New Year's Eve. And again, as a younger badge, I think I'm 26 years old at this time, 25, 26 years old. And I'm in the same area, the same neighborhood, and I'm writing down license plates for the stash house. And it's New Year's Eve. And I remember thinking to myself, all right, let me just get this done, because we're going to go out tonight. We're going to chop things up. We're going to go to the club. We're going to have a blast. I'm really excited. I'm still a young guy. I got, a bunch of guys we're going out with. And right around 4:30, the call comes out. And in Virginia Beach, it was like the tones, right? So you knew it was a code 2 call. You knew it was a hot call because I heard the tones come out. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Units 325, units 326, responding 767 Hampshire Lane, 2.5-year-old code gray. And, Danny, I remember sitting in my car and thinking to myself, man, that's a really shitty call for New Year's Eve. Code 2.5, code gray means unconscious, not breathing. And obviously a 2.5-year-old is a young boy. And I remember sitting there for 10, 15 seconds, like, damn, that's a really shitty call for New Year's Eve. 20 seconds goes by, 30 seconds goes by, and like a Mack truck, it hit me. Shit. 767 Hampshire Lane, that's Benny Jr., that 2.5-year-old is Benny Jr. And so I dropped the car in the drive, and I drove up on the front lawn. I go running inside, and Brittany's pointing at the room, and I go running in there. And so Brittany had taken the 6-month-old and went into the bathroom to take a shower. And she put on Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory for Benny Jr. And just being the little monkey that he is, he loves to climb. He's 2.5, and he climbs up on the windowsill, and he used the blind cord to swing and try to swing from the windowsill to the dresser. And the blind cord caught him around the neck. And as I brought him down, I started CPR and I remember just praying like this can't happen. This can't happen. This can't happen. And all of a sudden I got what I thought was a breath. And I remember the hope in my heart. I'm like, okay, we got him back. And I knew that I had EMS coming. I knew, I had the cavalry coming and everything else. And so that turned out to be his last breath. And I remember looking up, so EMS shows up, and as they come in to take over of CPR, I remember looking up, and I remember seeing the scratch marks on the wall. And when I tell you, dude, like, I'll never forget those scratch marks as long as I live, and how bad that hurt me, and how bad that, and to hear Brittany scream and save my firecracker, right? Like, because Benny Jr. was born on the 4th of July, and you know, and I ate that, man. I ate that for a long time, and you know, and I'll tell you guys, you know, I didn't tell anybody. You know, like how do you tell somebody that I sat in my car for 30 seconds and waited? Why didn't I just fucking go to the call? Why didn't I just answer the call? What, you know, and I still to this day, like, there's nobody on this side of the earth that can tell me that I couldn't have saved his life if I responded. You know, and that's a choice that I made that day, and it's something I'll always regret. And I know when I hopefully get upstairs, and I know that, you know, I gotta pay for that decision I made. And you know, but I couldn't tell anybody about it, man. And I had nightmares for years, and I refused to get help because just like my boy said, if you're not strong enough to see it, then it's not the job for you. And you know, so that's a little bit about how I got to, you know, to New Hampshire. And again, you know, what happens to us as cops is, especially like alpha males and alpha females, what happens is once you get hit with this trauma, we just keep digging holes and we just keep getting stuck in it to the point where like we don't know anything other than to run. And you know, when I got the out, when my wife at the time was like, hey, let's move up to New Hampshire, let's start fresh, let's start, you know, this, that, and the other, I'm like, let's do it. And you know, but the fact of the matter is the trauma doesn't go away. You can change your house, you can change your town, you can change your uniform, but the trauma's still in your heart. And you know, I'm over here vomiting at the mouth, man. I'm sorry, but
No, not at all.
No,
I remember you telling that story at the conference, and yeah, it just left me speechless. I mean,
that's exactly how I feel. That's
mm, that's tough. I mean, I don't have the words for that. You know, I can't imagine, you know, for all the different trauma, but that one's
man, I ate it. I just ate it
yeah,
so
I
bad,
can't.
right? And I couldn't say anything to anybody. You know, I couldn't say anything to my wife at the time. I couldn't say, like, how do you say that you're responsible for a 2.5-year-old to die? And, you know, it just eats you from the inside out. And you know, when you it- the only way to describe it is it just rotted me from the inside out. It affected my life in every possible way, and so I just felt like I was responsible for it. And um, you know, and I didn't know, you know, we're not given any tools to combat this. Like, we're not given any tools to say, hey, this is what you need to do if you're stuck in trauma. You know, trauma was a word that weak people used, and suicide was a word that you know, weak people used. And you know, here I am in my head having these thoughts and having these feelings, and going through, you know, the daily grind, and you know, putting on a happy face and a smile and putting on my uniform, and rolling out and trying to do a good job, but coming home at night and just crying, and not sleeping, and waking up in a cold sweat. Like, I should have fucking responded. Like, why didn't I respond? Um, you know, there's when you're stuck inside your own head, you just start making bad decisions and bad choices, and you know, just like I said, you know, those coping mechanisms that we start to drink too much, we start to work out too much, we start to do whatever it is that we can do to take our mind off of, you know, the trauma. And I'm not alone. Y'all know that. I mean, it's
Absolutely, yeah.
every single one of us, man. The like I was saying at the conference, the average human being sees 2 to 3 critical incidents in a lifetime, but the average cop in a 25-year career sees 400 to 500. And nobody wants to talk about this shit, man. And that's the problem. We're losing cops left and right. And you know, it just breaks my heart, man. And it's hopefully we can do something. And
Yeah, I mean, that's why we do this, and you know, that's why we bring you on. And I think, you know, your story and your book and you talking about that, I think hopefully that gets through to
yeah,
folks that they need to talk about this stuff, because that's a tough burden to carry. I mean, and I've been there, and the bad coping mechanisms. It's just so easy to fall into those coping mechanisms and take it to the excess, and you know, there's nothing else that really fills that. And then the next thing you know, you're in a darker place than you can imagine.
yep, Because you
And
just keep digging the hole deeper. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like that's the problem. Like we get stuck in some trauma and we wind up not even know which way is up after a certain amount of time because we're stuck in that trauma. Next thing you know, we're not showing up to court. Next thing you know, we're not paying our bills. Next thing you know, we're drinking too much. Next thing you know, we're having an extramarital affair. Next thing you know, we're arguing with some citizen about some stupid shit that doesn't matter. Next thing you know, they chest up on you. You wind up punching them. It's on a cell phone cam. And next thing you know, you're going to fucking jail. You know?
That's it right there. Absolutely. That's
And
that's
it's
it.
just a problem, you know, and the root of the problem is the unaddressed trauma. And I swear by it. And we got to do a better job, man. And you know, to the day I die, I'm going to preach mental health and resiliency, you know, for law enforcement because I don't want anybody else to go through what my partner went through. And you know, and um, yeah, man, it breaks my heart. So.
and there had to have been somebody in your life, your wife at the time, that gave you that reason and logic of that 30 seconds is not on you. The death of that child is not on you. But at the same time, I understand that not reaching you
Yeah.
or any of us in that state.
I'll be honest. I didn't tell anybody for a long time.
Really?
And so, you know, my boy's mother and I, we were married for 15 years and, we got divorced and she didn't know any of that. And she knew about the baby dying. She knew about the nightmares and, cause I had the flyer from the wake on my nightstand. I still have it to this day. I had it forever. And so, um, so she knew that the trauma was there, but, she read it in the book and, we had been divorced for 5 years at the time, and I'll never forget it. I was sitting in the church parking lot, and I dropped my son off to youth group, and I got a text. This is 3 days after, so this is like November 25th, like 3 days after Thanksgiving 2 years ago, and I just hit the publish button on the book 3 days prior, and I get a text message from her saying, "I read your book, period." And, I'm like, and because we really weren't on talking terms. We would text about the children and things like that, and she said I never knew half of this stuff, and and I said, yeah. I said, well, we didn't. Those were conversations that we weren't allowed to have, and she knew that I had a dangerous job. She knew that I had cornrows in my hair, full sleeve of tattoos. I'm running with some bad dudes every day, and she married a guy that's high and tight. She married a Navy guy without facial hair, and I don't know that guy anymore. And that guy doesn't exist. That guy didn't see all the things that I saw. And it got to a point where those different things. And I always say I take full responsibility for my divorce because I changed. And I thought CJ Davis was better and cooler and had more value than Matt Griffin was or did. And I can't count the number of times that I would get to, we'd have date nights set up. We'd have a babysitter. I get halfway home and somebody call me and need me for a play. And I call her and said, send the babysitter home. I got to go to work, right? The fentanyl epidemic's hitting. People are dying left and right. Somebody's got to go do this. And, I tell the story all the time. I was sitting in a Lap and Lager bar, which is probably where I'm going tonight after, you're done with this, watch a little Monday Night Football. But, I was sitting at the far side of the Lap and Lager bar, and it was like 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, and all I wanted was it was a long week. Like we had hit a paper early in the week, and everybody was talking about how cool the undercover world is, but you have 10 minutes of fun for a week's worth of paperwork, right? And so we hit the search warrant 2 a.m. We got shit tons of dope and money, and then the 10 minutes is over. And now being the case officer on it, man, I'm stuck with all the paperwork from it, all that shit, man, and so I was done for the week. Paperwork is done. The 7-day letter's in. The return's done. And all I wanted was a burger and a beer before I went home. And a door to the Lap and Lager pops open. And that feeling where somebody's looking at you. And so I glanced his way, and a dude starts beelining over towards me. And I didn't know if he, at that point was a threat or, if he was going to come dap me up or whatever. And comes over. He's like, "You're Detective Griffin, right?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "You're that undercover cop." I said, "Yep." He says, "The fuck are you doing?" I said, "Man, what do you mean?" He goes, "It's Friday afternoon, Friday evening. Maybe if you're out there going to do your job, my son will still be alive. He overdosed last night." I remember how that hit me, man. Like like I'm on guard, like ready to chest up on this guy that's cursing at me on a Friday evening in my local bar where I'm taken care of, where I know the owners and everything else, and he's essentially checks me at what do you do at that point? And I remember I said, you know what, you're right. And like that's where the switch in my head started to go, and where like the means became, the means started to justify the end, or the end justifies the means, or however that goes. And my family wasn't important at that point. It was saving people from this fentanyl and this opioid epidemic. And so I take full responsibility. But to go back to what we were saying, I never talked to anybody about that. I had a counselor, and but again, I couldn't go to the police department to have a counselor. I had to go find somebody on my own, and I had to beg them not to say shit to anybody because I just needed somebody to talk to. And thank God they didn't. Because and again, so let's rewind for a second. When I'm going from Virginia Beach up to New Hampshire, right? My background investigator reached out to my marriage counselor. And my marriage counselor had dropped a dime on me from something I'd said during that counseling session with my wife. And I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. I said, I said something in a counseling session that can't, how is that going to be used against me in the background? So I take that same mentality moving forward to this.
Why did he even ask that?
Because this is what's so crazy. So he interviews my wife, and she's still my wife at the time. We're moving up. We want to be, keen. And so she says, yeah, we saw a marriage counselor, and he asked for the name of the marriage counselor. So we provide it, and he calls her, sends and she dropped a dime on me. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
And so I had to answer questions about what I said during a counseling session that I thought was confidential. And so I'm taking that mentality into knowing that I'm not sleeping, knowing that I'm irritable, knowing that like my life is upside down, but knowing that I need help, but knowing that I can't ask for help where I work because I can't have my gun taken away. I can't be taken out of the undercover world because that's all I know how to do. And so I go find this lady on downtown Main Street, and I say, listen, can you promise me that you won't, no matter what, that you won't say anything, but I just need somebody to talk to? And by the grace of God, she said yes.
So for those that maybe are just getting introduced to you and your story now, how long had you been doing the undercover work up in New Hampshire?
Yeah, so at that point, probably about 3 years, 4 years, something like that. But most of my career up there was focused around that. Started off on patrol, but again, I had the background from a big city narcotics to come up there, and so New Hampshire's a different animal. So the state models live free or die, and like they take that shit seriously up here. So like there's no Carroll doctrine, there's no trash pulls, there's no there's a lot of different things that I had to learn to be a better cop. And so I was always part of the narcotic world, whether it was, patrol narcotics, whether it was assisting the drug task force or whatever it was, and a quick 4-year stint as the SRO. And then from there, right back into narcotics. And, that's where I got the full-time play to the fentanyl epidemic kind of really hit about a year and a half into it. And we just went full tilt into, because New Hampshire and Ohio were kind of the two leading states for fentanyl overdoses, and nobody really kind of knew how to attack this and where it came from with the, the opioid epidemic. And so we had my county had like a 1,500% increase in overdoses in like a 6-month period. And,
So what was the culture of your agency vis-a-vis mental health? Because I'm getting the impression that it wasn't very good.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It's a good old boys club. So I mean, and again, so like I didn't grow up here. Where I'm sitting right now, I'm in my hometown. But and again, like I don't fault these guys or anything else, but like, when you come in from a different place, they've got to vet you. You're not they're your buddy that you played football with. And so I've got a big city mentality coming from Virginia Beach and growing up outside of New York City. And now I'm in a small New England town of 35,000 with 30 other cops that all grew up together, that all played football together, that all knew each other, knew each other's wives. And here I come with the mentality of let's do A, B, and C. So it was a rough go. And so, you kind of combine that aspect of it. And again, I built some really close friends, but even now, like I look back and I really kind of keep in contact with maybe a handful, to be honest. And that's a shame. That's a shame because we couldn't, you couldn't go to ask for help. I remember how, like, man, I remember so many times that, like, like I would say something at, like, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're just yucking things up back at the station, and you're like, man, that's some fucked up shit, man. Like, are you okay? You need to see somebody. Like, there's EAP, and and just like having that shit on. And Denny, I don't know if I told this story at the trauma conference, but I remember so in our break room we had the EAP flyer, right? And I remember I was struggling, so I went into the break room and I took the EAP flyer, and I went out to my car and I called the number, and I said, listen, I'm struggling real bad. And this is right around, like, everything happening. And I got put on hold for about 15 minutes, but I had nowhere to go, so I just sat there on hold. And so it's just on, it was on speakerphone, and so I'm just waiting, listening to the shitty little music, whatever. And finally, they come back on and they say, "Man, we have nobody in your area that can talk to you." And I remember how that felt. Like, so I don't have anybody to talk to. I said, "What if I, and thank God at that point, I wasn't suicidal, but imagine if I was at that point, and you're telling me that you have nobody that is willing to talk to me." I wanted to say, well, what about you? Do you care?
Right.
Wow.
And so, the person's response on the other end was like, well, we'll have somebody call you tomorrow. And I wanted to be like, that's so shitty.
Tomorrow?
Yep, tomorrow.
I mean, that's just an epic
failure, right?
I mean, an epic failure. I mean, here you go. We're already struggling with the fact that you feel like you can't talk to anybody, you don't want to talk to anybody. You have all this stigma centered around it, and you finally get to a point where it's boiled up so much where you're like, I've got to talk to somebody, and you make that step. You get the number, you call it, and you're like, oh, hey, yeah, thanks for calling, but sorry.
Well, here's the other thing too. If you're doing that much undercover work all the time, intensely, is there nobody within your own agency that is your anchor?
Not a one.
Yeah, because for that much of amount of undercover work,
somebody who's not just monitoring all the shit you're bringing in, but is also monitoring you.
Yeah.
And they would have seen the spiral out of control.
Yeah,
and it's almost like nobody cared because you were producing.
Mm-hmm.
The cow was still giving the milk,
but there was no safeguard. No safeguard put in place.
There were no guardrails at all.
Yeah. And then the wheels came off when, with everything that happened with Brian. And, I don't know if you want me to tell this side of it, but, this
Please.
is so the wheels start to come off, right? And it's summertime of 2016, and my wife and I separate, and so I'm living in this shitty 1-bedroom apartment, and I got my children, and I remember going into the break room. I tell a story all the time because it was like the lowest of the low, and my wife at the time had frozen all of our accounts, and so I didn't have any money, and so I was starving, but I had too much pride to ask anybody for help, and so I didn't want to call someone like, "Hey man, I got no money. Can I come over for dinner?" You just don't do that, and
right, yeah.
And so I go into the police department to take a shower, and I remember going to the break room, and I looked around, and inside of the refrigerator of the break room, there was this like beautiful Subway sub. And man, I looked out again, and there was nobody coming, and I fucking ate that sub, man. And that was hands down the lowest point of my life. When I finished that sub and I put the trash in the trash can, I felt sick to my stomach. I just eaten somebody's fucking sub, and I'll never forget that feeling. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll never forget that feeling, man. And I just said to myself, I'm like, you're such a piece of shit. You just ate somebody's fucking sub. And I walked out, and so as we start to move forward, right? So now I'm at rock bottom, and I feel like a piece of shit. And the only person that ever continuously checked on me was my former partner, Brian. And Brian became the chief of police of our small town, and it just an amazing man in a lot of different ways. And so he would always send me a text like, status check, you okay? He'd see me in the hallway, and he'd be like, hey, are you okay? And he meant it. You know what I mean? He wasn't just saying, are you okay? He wanted to know if I was okay. And like he would stop and he would look at me and say, are you okay? I need to know if you're all right. And, you know, a lot of times I just covered up and like, yeah, I'm good, Brian. And so, you know, my divorce was finalized on January 5th of 2017. And, you know, I didn't have much. And again, you guys know when you go, you know, we have details up in the Northeast where you make extra money directing traffic and overtime work. When you go undercover, you lose all that. So
Right.
not only do I have child support and alimony, but I lost all my overtime pay, and there's no way for me to make more money, right? And so I'm like, I've gotten nothing. I can't afford anything at all. I can't afford to provide for my children. To this day, my kids still love some ramen noodles because that's all we can afford. But and so we start to move forward, right? And I start to get a little bit better. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna put my head down. And there's a lot of things that happen inside of this period. But so March 9th, 2017 would have been my 15-year wedding anniversary. And you know the day where you know it's just one of those days where you wake up and I'm laying in this shitty ass bed, and I'm like, today just sucks. You're not feeling where you just like today sucks, and everything you touch is gonna be shit. And I knew it. So we go into work. I'm like, what do we do as men, as women, as alpha males, alpha females? We just put our head down and go to work. We just want to be successful at any aspect of our life. Like I'm just so tired of failing at everything. And so all I wanted to do was be successful. And we had a prostitution sting going on that day. And I remember saying to myself, like, let me just be successful at one fucking thing today. And so, you know, we're briefing up. It's like 9:00, and somebody knocks on the door and says, hey, Chief wants to see you. I'm like, damn, the fuck does he want, man? And I say, hey guys, hang tight. Let me go down and see what Brian wants. So I go down and knock on the door. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? He said, Griff, have a seat. And like, when the chief tells you have a seat, you're not sure if this is like, am I having a seat as a friend? Am I having a seat as a detective right now? Like, do I need my union rep, or are we talking about like, you know, drinking beers later? And so I'm in self-preservation mode because I'm not sure where he's going. And he had this way about him where he would just kind of look at you, and he would look at you like 1 or 2, maybe 3 seconds past what the normal person would. And it would just take you, like it would just unnerve you. And he said, are you okay? And so I looked back and he said, you know what today is, right? Referring to what would have been my 15-year wedding anniversary. I said, yeah, Brian, I'm straight. He said, Griff, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you okay? I said, Brian, I'm straight, man. He said, because if you're not mentally prepared, you're not physically ready. And you got a lot of people out here that are relying on you to lead this operation. So you tell me now if you're not okay, and I'll comp you out for the day. And I said, no, I'm good. And I waited an extra couple of seconds. I got up. I'm like, we straight? Yep. You know what I didn't say? How are you? 2 hours later, Brian went home and shot and killed himself. And I was the last one to talk to him. And I didn't ask him if he was all right. And I ate that every day. You know, he had, one of the last things that he decided to do was ask me if I was okay. On what would have been my 15-year wedding anniversary, he took the time out of what he knew was going to be his final day. And sometimes I just think, like, I wonder if he was just waiting for me to say, hey, Brian, I know after this out, let's go out and chop it up, have a cold one. And that's where things just spiraled out of control. Like, I mean, real talk. Here I'm still dealing with the baby. I'm still dealing with Benny Jr. I haven't got a handle on that yet. And now the depression, the trauma, everything just hit so hard. It hit like a Mike Tyson left hook, man. And I remember sitting in my apartment at 100 Washington Street, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden it was like a light bulb went off. I'm like, I get it. Because it didn't make sense to me, right? Everybody from my entire life had been telling me that suicide is weak, and suicide is the weakest thing that anybody did. But like I couldn't accept that because Brian was the strongest, toughest motherfucker that I've ever met in my life. And then all of a sudden, man, it just clicked. I said, it's not suicide. It's a sacrifice. And the depression, the trauma started to change my brain, and it changed the way I thought about it. And I'm like, you know what? It's not suicide. It's a sacrifice. And my whole life has been a sacrifice, just like Brian's life has been a sacrifice. And now this is the next stage of what my sacrifice is, between the Navy, between the police department, between owning all these different things, and giving up my marriage, giving up the ability to go to certain like football games for my children, and date night and everything else. This is the next stage. This is the next part of my sacrifice. And I decided on March 17th that I was done. I was gonna end my life. And man, I'll tell you, I remember that day so vividly. And it's funny because I kept thinking, who's gonna find my body? And I know that sounds so crazy to say, but like I just kept thinking, which person, which cop is gonna find my body? And and yeah, I wrote my suicide note. I keep my suicide note on my phone, and obviously I have it in my head, but and I think about it a lot, and I think about how how I've gotten to where I am today. And and I mean, it's so the Journey to Midnight, the book that I wrote, is I was going to commit suicide on midnight of March 17th, 2017. And so there's something that just felt right about those zeros on the clock. And so during the day, like I remember just kind of like the I know it sounds shitty to say, but just kind of the release. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't have to think about it anymore. I don't have to try and figure this out anymore. I don't have to be a piece of shit anymore. To be honest with you, I don't have to fail anymore. My kids don't have to watch me fail anymore. And so I was making the preparations, and I wound up sitting I had a Yukon, and I wound up sitting in the car for a while, and I started listening to the music of my life. So there's certain songs that like remind me of like my life, and so I started listening to them, like like Tracy Chapman, like Fast Car from like high school, and like like all these different songs that just like came back, and like growing up, my parents used to listen to Simon and Garfunkel, and so they would listen to it over and fucking over again on the way to vacation. And so like The Boxer is like the only fucking song that I liked. I'm like, can we just play that one song, because the rest of these songs fucking suck. Like, I don't give a shit about some like Stream and everything else. And so I started listening to the songs that like reminded me of my life, and so I had my gun on the center console. My note was right there, and my phone was on Do Not Disturb. And it's about 11:10, 11:15, something like that. And all of a sudden my phone rings, and it scared the shit out of me. I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, and so what I didn't know in 2017 is that if you call twice inside of a minute, it breaks through the Do Not Disturb. And it scared the ever living shit out of me, because my best friend had called, and obviously it didn't go through, but he was like, shit, let me just leave a voicemail. And so he calls back inside of a minute, and it breaks through, and just out of terror, because I didn't know if the gun went off. Like, it was just, I was in that vibe where you're just kind of vegging out and just listening to your music and everything else, and ready to do what I was getting ready to do. And the phone rings, and it was some rap music that I had on my phone from the the ghetto undercover days. And so I pick it up, and my buddy says, Griff. Yeah. I said, hey man, what are you doing? I said, nothing, man, just hanging out. He's like, why don't you come over and have a beer? And it was my buddy Ben. And I said, nah, not tonight, Ben. Maybe tomorrow. I said, I got something I got to take care of tonight. And I said, yeah, let me give you a ring tomorrow, brother. And he said, Griff, before you go, I want to tell you two things. And now what you have to understand about Ben is that, Ben's the type of dude that if you hug him, he tenses up. Right? He's not that dude that, like, I'm a feelings person. Like, I'll tell you that I love you. I'll tell you that, like, we'll sit down and we'll cry together. I have no problem. I'll also, have no problem going outside and fighting with people. But like, Ben's not that dude. He's not emotional. And so he goes, Griff, let me tell you two things. So the first thing I want to tell you is that I love you. And I remember how that hit me. It was, stopping the tracks. Cause I'm like, his last name is Nugent. And I said, Nuge. And he goes, hold on. And he goes, number two, I want to tell you that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And as you're going through what you're going through, Griff, I want you to know that I'm here for you. And it stopped me in my tracks. And I remember thinking to myself, like, all right. And at about 11:15, 11:17, I made the best decision of my life. And for anybody listening, here's the best decision that I've ever made in my life. If today's a good day to die, so is tomorrow. And if you're, I'm not trying to preach to anybody, but if you're feeling like I was feeling, just know that tomorrow's just as good a day as today, and keep pushing it off. So I went over there and I had a beer with Ben, and on March 18th, I made the same decision. Today's a good day to die, so is tomorrow. And I did that for almost 3 months, 4 months. Every day I said the same thing. And I finally changed that mantra to today I'm going to do something good. And it started off like I was going to do something good for myself. I was going to wake up and do some, go to the gym or read a book or figure out what the next phase of my life was going to be. Right. And so like, I always I kind of joke about it because I would get to the bed at night and I would lay there. And I'm like, man, I didn't do anything good for myself today. And I'd be in my underwear and I'd roll out of bed and I would rep out like 50 push-ups and then get back in bed. And that was my good thing that I did for myself. And I shit you not, Denny, Al, I've done that every single day since March 17th, 2017. I've done something good for myself or somebody else. And I started over the last really kind of like year to 2 years to make sure that that's for somebody else. And the satisfaction and gratitude that I've gotten personally from that has changed my life. And again, I can give you a perfect example today. So my neighbor who was walking down the street, I hadn't seen him for a while, and I saw the nurse, like like the traveling nurse was in their driveway, and he was a former cop too, and so he's walking down the street right in front of my house, and I said to my son, I said, hey, when Randy walks back by, let me know. And he goes, there's Randy. And so I went outside and I said, hey, man, I just want to let you know that I'm praying for you, brother. I don't know what's going on. You don't have to tell me, but I want you to know that that I care about you. And if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. I know I travel a little bit, but, if you need something, you let me know. And he started telling me everything that's going on with him. And we had a great talk. But that's the things that's what I mean. I wouldn't ever have done that before. And, that's meant all the difference for me. And that's what the journey of Midnight's about is coming through the other side. And, so I don't know if that makes any sense, but
It makes absolute sense. I remember when you talked about that at the conference, that did stick with me when you talked about that. If, today's a good day to die, then tomorrow is too. That if you can hold out for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then once tomorrow, hold out for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And just you're extending it just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That really resonated with me. I'm sure that did with many others, but I mean, I think that's a huge takeaway.
Yeah.
Is you don't have to think about what's going on, for the next 6 months or for the rest of this year. Let's just go to tomorrow.
And it's so interesting, man, where I got that. And if y'all get a chance to read the book, where I got that from was from, from Search and Rescue. And so the funny story behind it is I was a sonar tech. I went out to San Diego to become a sonar tech and listen to submarines and just, had this happy little Navy career, man. And just, every port have a lot of fun, we'll just say. But I'm about a year and a half into that, and the ops lieutenant looks at me and my buddy Adam and was like, hey, you guys are in good shape, huh? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, can you both swim? And we're both surfers. I said, yep. He said, well, I need search and rescue swimmers. I thought this shit was a collateral duty. I thought it was like something that you do on the side, right? I had no idea that I was getting ready to go to 6 weeks of pure fucking hell. Like, those are some evil motherfuckers. Like, to this day, if I see one of my instructors, I'd probably punch him in the face. They're just some evil fucking people, man. I think they're the spawn of Satan. Whatever, they're crazy. And so, long story short, man, all these people are dropping out. All these people are ringing the bell. And the first week, the base bar, everybody knows hump day. And hump day is Wednesday. And so, but the base bar stayed open until 2 o'clock in the morning on hump day. And so Adam and I, my best friend, we decided that we go have a picture of Budweiser. And so, in the Navy, Budweiser stands for because you deserve what every individual should enjoy regularly. And so that's what was going through our head, man. So we would go through our day and we were like, yeah, because you deserve, you can scream at me all you want, but I'm just reciting Budweiser in my head because no matter what happens today, right? I know that Adam and I are going to split a Budweiser tonight, no matter what, because you're not going to keep us until 2 o'clock in the morning, right? You're going to let us get maybe 7 o'clock and maybe 10 o'clock, but we're going to split a pitcher of Budweiser. And so I didn't make it through search and rescue by looking at it at 6 weeks. I said, I just need to make it through to today because tonight we're having a pitcher of Budweiser. And I've taken that mentality in so many aspects of my life. And again, there's days that suck, but just make it through today. And tomorrow's a brand new opportunity to go out and crush it and punch the world in the face and to prove all these assholes wrong that told me that I can never do anything else besides be a cop. And every day I wake up with that mentality that, that I'm gonna keep pushing hard, and no matter how bad today could be, there's still tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new opportunity. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it really is. It,
It's yeah, it's just so positive. I mean, what else can I say? I
Yeah.
mean, it. Wow, I'm processing a lot of the
Yeah.
last hour that we've been talking. When did you make that decision that okay, the job's done and I'm moving
dog.
on, and
Yeah,
then
we need like multiple episodes because that is, I look back at that time. I thought this is, how much worse could my life get, right? Like I'm trying to turn myself around. I'm trying to do all this stuff. And so there's a lot of things, and I'm gonna give you the quick story, but we should probably have a whole nother episode for this. But
we can do that.
we can we
So-
can make that happen.
So one of the most empowering things that I've ever done was leave the police department. I'll give you the short version, and if we want to dive into this another time, we can definitely do that. But so I was targeted, and when I say that, like, so I was no longer part of the Good Old Boys Club after Brian passed away. I wasn't part of the Good Old Boys Club, and because Brian always had my back. And now I don't have anybody that's standing up for me. And so I got pulled out of the undercover world. I got put on midnight patrol. I got fucked with. I got put on an internal. I got put on my second internal. And so I again, one of my decisions that I had made was to create a class about fighting fentanyl. And nobody in the Northeast had any idea about fentanyl. So long story short, guys, I'm gonna tie this up. So I put a lot of work into trying creating this great curriculum. It was a 2-day class. I was charging about, I think, $375 for the 2-day class, and this class was going to be in Hampton, New Hampshire. They had a maximum of 50 people, right? And now, mind you, right? Like I don't have a pot to piss in. Like I got alimony, I got child support, I got no, a lot of shit's shaken up, and I got lawyer fees, like all this stuff. And so I sold it out, right? Do those quick numbers. It's like 11 grand that I was going to make from this 2 days. I put my leave request in. I did everything right. I marketed it. I had a website, and the chief comes down on Friday. It was a Monday. November 6th and 7th, 2017. And the chief comes down on Friday and says, "Hey, I'm canceling your leave for Monday and Tuesday." I said, "Chief, you can't do that." I said, "I got a class." And he said, "I'm canceling." I said, "Why are you canceling?" He said, you have court on Monday. I said, "I don't have court." I said, "I've got no, you're supposed to get a subpoena." I never got a subpoena. And so anyway, we go back and forth. I said, "I'm not going to be here." I said, "I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to be here." He goes, "We'll deal with that on Wednesday." And so I go out, I do my class, and I crushed it, and I made that money. And I remember on Tuesday night, I had a conversation. Man, this is going to get me. I'm going to try to get through this one without choking up. So I remember on Tuesday night, I had my son, my 18-year-old son, who's down at Florida Tech right now. I think he was maybe 12 at the time, and super mature because he went through this whole divorce with, being the oldest one in my family. I said to him, I said, "Buddy," I said, "Are you okay if Daddy's not a cop anymore?" And guys, I can't make this up. He looks me dead in the eye at 12 years old and goes, "Daddy, I just want you to be happy again." And I said, "Fucking A." And I said, "Okay, pal." And then, so the next morning, I said, "If I get called down to the office and I get fucked with, I'm done." And I prayed about it. And I sat there and I said, "God," I said, just give me the strength to do it if I'm going to do it." And I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything else. But again, at the end of the day, like, I already been at rock bottom. So who really gives a shit? So so I get down to my little cubicle, and right as rain, here comes that phone call at 9:00. "Hey, Chief needs you down in the conference room." I knew it. I said, "Here we go." And so I remember walking down there, and I took every step, and I said, "God, just give me the strength, man. And I need you to be with me on this one." And I get down in the conference room, and I open the door, and there's the captains and the chief sitting there. And I don't know if anybody that's listening has been under an internal before, but they got to do like the Garrity rights and everything else. They got to put you, they got to formally inform you that there's an internal investigation. So the chief said, "Detective Griffin, I just want to form." I said, "Chief, stop." And so I ran through a list of accolades since the time that I started in the police department. and all the things that I'd done and everything else. And the last question I asked him, I said, "Hey," I said, "Chief, how many openings do we have right now at the police department?" He said, I think we have 7. I reached in my pocket, I pulled out my 2-week notice, I put it on the table, and I said, "Now you have 8." And I walked the fuck out of the police department.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It was the scariest, most empowering day of my life. I sat in my Yukon, the same Yukon, and I said, "Well, shit. Well, now what am I gonna do?" You know. But I remember I sat in the police department parking lot after just resigning for probably damn near an hour and a half, and I said, "Now it's time." And I just decided that I was gonna build my life back up, and nobody was gonna define me again. I was gonna figure out how I was gonna lead my life, and I wanted to do it for my children. And so,
Man, see, this is why people have to hear your story, because there's so many officers out there now, first responders, that are going through something, going through tons, and feeling the same. They can't talk to anybody. They're embarrassed to talk to anybody.
yep.
And I think by hearing these stories, it helps them become comfortable with, okay, I can talk to somebody, or I should talk, or at least if you can just talk to one person and start there.
Man, because they'd be so surprised, and if you're listening, you'd be so surprised how many people are thinking just like you are.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Griff, I gotta tell you, we've been at this for a minute or two,
Yeah.
on this podcast, and I mean, if people could see Denny and I think we were just kind of like bobbleheads for the last hour. I mean, this is really one, and we've been blessed with some great guests with some really powerful stories, but this is really one of the most powerful.
Man, I
that I've
appreciate
heard.
that, brother. It's just from my heart. It's genuine, you know?
But just to see where you are now, and the positivity that you clearly have, that to me is very empowering.
And I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hearing to be in that spot, like you say, where you're rock bottom, and to be able to make that turn that corner, and then, like I said, and then to progress to where you are now is just tremendous. But I mean, getting that phone call at that time, I mean, how those things fell into place.
Yeah.
You can't help but think that there's something there that
Gotta be.
God reached
Without a
out
doubt.
somehow.
100%. And I say every day I live on borrowed time. And it's interesting, Denny, like it out. So, I've done some of these keynotes about the book and everything else, and like here's one of the epiphanies that I've had. People would line up after the show, or after the keynote, and to buy the book. And I really thought that they wanted to read the book. I maybe they do, maybe they don't, but you know what they really wanted to do? Man, they just wanted to talk. They just wanted to say, "Griff, I'm struggling too, brother, and this is why." Like people like Danny, if you remember, like people were lined up afterwards, and that's the trauma conference, and they just wanted to do is just tell their story, and we would sit there for hours after these conferences and just chop things up and listen.
I was worried I was going to have to order your book. I didn't think I was going to get one. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not going to get a book. I didn't get in line soon enough. I'm like, I got to knock somebody out this line here.
Yeah. And I think hope is a powerful tool. And when we empower with hope that tomorrow's a better day, and that next week is going to be a better week, and it's just such a driving force. And I think the more that we can provide hope to people that listen to this, that if you're going through some struggles, man, just know that today's trauma is tomorrow's treasure. Like, you will triumph. I promise you. If you push it off a day or a week or a month or a minute, you will triumph over that trauma. I promise you. You have my word on it. Because that inside that trauma is treasure.
Man, that is so true. So true.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to take that. really take that to heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we love having folks on. And well, I was so glad to get you on because I knew, I didn't tell Al anything really. I really didn't. I gave him a little bit, talked about the book briefly.
Yeah.
I really
No,
didn't give him any
and
any of it. I wanted him to hear it,
in full
from
disclosure,
you.
I bought your book.
Okay.
I've
He's-
only scratched the surface of it.
He's still trying to learn how to read, so it's taking a little bit longer to get
Yeah,
to
there's
the page.
there's only like one or two pictures in there, Al. So
Well, are there pages I can color? But
I love it.
sometimes I like to go into these conversations fairly
Yeah.
cold, and kind of hear it in your case just directly from you, and it's but really, I'm telling you, man, one of the
Appreciate it,
most
bro.
powerful stories I've heard, but I'm really just kind of taken with just how positive you are,
Right.
and
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
man.
your presentation at the conference was just fantastic.
Thank you.
The way you presented it, because it is a tough topic, and I know it's not easy for you to talk about. And I know you have to talk about difficult things, and it is got some darkness to it, but you really did a great job of presenting it, and that's what really got me. And I wanted Al to hear it go cold, because I know me sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, I knew what you were going to. I knew the
Yeah.
stories, and I remember hearing it the first time and just going, oh my gosh, wow, and
Yeah.
it just hit you like a ton of bricks. But the way you did it, you've got a fun personality. It was you made a tough topic still have some engagement from everybody. So it was just awesome.
Yeah, man.
And it's
I
great having you
appreciate
on
it,
the
bro.
air.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I really do. Um, yeah, man, it's been such a blessing, and and I think it's so cool. And I'm not sure if I was telling you this or not, but I'm not even sure if I said this at the trauma conference, but it was selected for PBS's Hiding in Plain Sight. And so I'm so like unbelievably blessed. So the Ua brothers and Ken Burns have a series on PBS called Hiding in Plain Sight, and season 1 was all about youth mental illness, and The Journey to Midnight was selected for season 2. And
that's
season
awesome.
season 2 is all about first responders, and military and veterans. And so the idea after our first filming was to essentially just have an episode, but now it's going to be more like I'm going to anchor a lot of the different episodes with different commentary about each individual story and everything else. And so, man, just such a blessing, and we're finishing up the screenwrite, man. And so, like, we'll see what happens with it, man. So here, just like you were saying, like, it's tough. It's tough to, like, I always tell people, like, I'm reliving probably the worst days of my life, right? And so here's a cool story behind it. And I know we're getting ready to end this up, but I'll finish with this cool God story. So I'm up in Syracuse, New York, and I took a couple of days off from work, and I was doing 4 keynotes in 5 days. And on Saturday was like a mental illness or a mental health fair. And so I'm just tired, right? I've read my suicide note. I've done spoken word about the last 2 hours of my life every night. I'm mentally drained. I didn't want to do it. And I remember waking up saying, like, it's like a 1 o'clock like show. But I didn't want to do it. But I'm like, you know what? I got to do it because somebody may want to hear. Somebody needs to hear this. So anyway, so I go through the show, and I go through the keynote, and there's a guy that's hanging out in the back, and everybody gets done, and he comes up, and he's like, listen, I stayed around because I want to talk to you. He's like, your book needs to be a movie. Your life needs to be a movie, and people need to hear this. And I'm like, he's like, have you ever thought about that? I said, yeah. I said, I just don't know the first place to start. He goes, well, it just so happens that I'm an actor, and I live in Syracuse, and I'm just up here for a little bit, and I'm going to connect you with a really awesome screenwriter. No promises, no guarantees, but I'm going to make the connection, and it's up to you whether or not he takes your story. And so he sets me up with Brian. Interesting that name, right? And so he sets me up with Brian, and so we have this call. And at the end of it, he's like, "Listen, I got a lot of things going on. I don't know if I can take this. I got a couple movies already that are getting ready to start filming. I'm just not sure that I got the time to really devote into it." Calls me back the next day and he says, I'm gonna take your story." And so we're just about done with the detailed um, playwright. And so when that's done, man, we're gonna hopefully do whatever we can. And anybody that's listening, if y'all got a hook for me on a production company or anybody that wants to make this into a movie, the screenwrite's going to be done, by the end of the year. So we'll see, man. I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful for all these
That's
opportunities. But
amazing.
yeah,
That's awesome. That is totally awesome.
I'm really looking forward to the PBS series.
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
definitely
it's gonna be
catch that.
awesome, man. Like if you've never seen it, like the way they did episode or season 1 is unbelievable, man. Like wicked successful. And I'm so pumped for the way they're doing. So like if you look at my website, author Matt Griffin, the home page is us filming, the for season 2. And they're just awesome people, and they've got such great vision for what they're trying to do. And season 1 has helped so many people already.
That's awesome.
So,
I like Ken Burns even more now.
yeah. Yep.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on Badge of the Bone.
Man.
And I think we need to probably try to work out and getting you back, because I would like to kind of dive into the whole when you left law enforcement. Yeah, just because that's a whole separate issue. That's a tough hurdle in itself. It's just outside of everything else. That's just tough. And I know for a lot of folks that want to leave or have left struggle with that. So I think those are valuable conversations as well.
Yeah, the identity aspect of it was such a struggle. Personally, there was such a struggle for me to figure out who Matt Griffin was again. So I would love to do that and really, carve into that, because that took me a while to really try and figure out who I was and without having a badge on my chest.
Man, I think that's the biggest for everyone that leaves. So yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch through email and carve out another block of time to do that episode, because I think there's a lot of value in that.
Oh, I think we got to have him.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and of course, you're talking about the end and your ultimate separation from your agency.
Yeah.
Well, we got that leadership component.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about that plenty as well, and that contributing to a lot of our struggles.
That's the next keynote that I'm putting together. The curriculum I'm putting together is being a trauma-informed leader.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I would love that. Now that I know that I can drink beer on here, then yeah, we can definitely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You got to, yeah, because like I said, we're in the bar. So, but man, yeah, brother, you're doing great things.
Thanks,
great
man.
things. I'm so glad we got to meet, and so thankful for you to come on.
I thank you, man. I am
Absolutely,
so
guys.
thrilled, and I'm sorry that I didn't get to meet you in person, but hopefully that will change very soon.
Yeah. Absolutely, guys, and this has been my absolute pleasure, and I'm grateful for you guys and what you guys are doing, and helping everybody out. So this is great, man. So thank you very much, and really, really grateful for it.
Thank you, man. We appreciate it. Al, what'd you think?
I am really glad you guys connected.
Man, so am I. I told you. Incredible story.
No shit. One of the most powerful stories we've had in a while. I'm just really impressed, and just in the fact that Griff is so positive.
Yeah, oh yeah.
After going so dark, I mean, I can't say that enough. He seems to be in such a great place.
Mm-hmm.
In his head and his heart, having gone to where he went, and seeing, dealing with the things that he had, and there were parts of his story that resonated. I can think of instances like with the note.
Yeah,
where like, why did that happen? Something gets stuck in your head like that.
Oh yeah.
And what was this kid trying to say? And that really hit home, because I've had more than a couple incidents like that over the course of my public safety career where I'm like, what if, why? And for whatever reason, it gets stuck like an earworm.
Yeah, those unanswered questions. I think sometimes people forget about that. You go to these scenes or you deal with these situations, and there's just so much that is unanswered.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really reconcile that.
Yeah. And he was one of the first people I've heard say that way. And like the light bulb went off in my head. Like, I've done that. I've done that.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I've done, why? And I know for me, in those instances, I can't see faces. To this day, I can't see faces.
Yeah, I have that sometimes. A lot of some of the worst incidents, I can't really see faces clearly.
I can't remember. They're just blanks in my memory.
Yeah.
I can see every other detail, clear as day, but I cannot see a face.
Yeah.
And it's like my brain blocked it out. So, but you think about why could I, and anyway, that just resonated.
No, it was.
We were sitting here like a couple bobbleheads through the whole episode.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, but I think it's a great testament too, to, like he said, if you can make it through the next day,
mm-hmm.
and then you get to that day, then just make it one more day, make it to the next day. You can push through. I mean, look at what a dark place he was, and where he was just, defeated.
Yeah.
And then look where he is now. That you can make it through that. You can get through that. You can turn it all around for something that's good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just talking to him off air. I mean, just
oh yeah,
how excited he is, how happy he is. I got to say, I mean, that we've been really blessed here doing this podcast to be able to talk to folks like him.
Oh yeah,
and others, that have come on here to share their stories.
Oh yeah, the folks we've met. I mean, it's great, and I hope
it's been a gift for me.
Well, me too. I mean, and I hope for everybody that's listening, there's all these stories that we've heard. I hope anybody that's struggling or going through these things or in that dark place or feel like there's no light ahead can hear these stories and hear how difficult the times were for all these individuals we had, and see that they did come through on the other side, and you can too. And everybody can come through better and make it through it.
And it doesn't mean that you have a total victory either.
Sure. That's a good point.
All I got to do is look in the mirror and go, you still got a lot of work to do, but I think a lot of us can say that.
Well, yeah, I mean, me as well. But you can get to where you seeing some light. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can get there.
It's not a train.
That's right. That's right. Now, so you're making me cough, damn it.
Well, that's good. And so I'm glad, really glad we got him on.
Yeah, so definitely, I would definitely recommend checking out his book, The Journey to Midnight. Again, Matt Griffin, The Journey to Midnight. Pick it up, give it a read. We touched on just a little bit. The book goes into so much more, and it's definitely very powerful, very inspiring. So,
but we got a very creative plan for a part 2. Well, I'm just going to have to see if we can make that happen.
We have a part 2 in the works, so hopefully we'll have that part 2 with Griff. Yeah, not in the near future, but relatively soon.
Soon.
But but I did want to address Al. We had some delays in some of the release of our episodes, and we talked about it with all my congestion, coughing, sinus infection crap beating me down. But there I go again. There I go again. Every time this year with this stupid weather being hot, cold, it jacks me up. So we're going to take a break here soon.
Yeah.
But we still got some things we're going to try to get done and released before we break for the holidays.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to get least one or two more things out.
Yeah.
And we got a couple long-term things that we're looking at. We were actually just having a conversation about that. And so some issues that I think you guys out there listening are probably going to want to know about. And then it's going to be on to season 3.
Yeah. So, but make sure if you're listening, make sure whatever platform you use, and make sure you are following us. Make sure you're putting this in your library or whatnot, so you get the updates. Because the next couple episodes may be a little different on release times. It's a lot going on right now, so you want to get the notice that those have been dropped.
Yeah, and please, if you like what you're hearing, please share it.
Yeah.
Not just to folks in our line of work, but maybe somebody that loves somebody in our line of work. But share it, and then also let us know. I mean, if you think we're doing a good job, let us know. If you think we're really screwing it up, yeah, that's hard, but let us know that too. See, he's coughing
can't make me
again.
laugh.
He's
but,
coughing again.
But yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's. I don't want to hear it, but maybe we need to hear it.
You learn from fucking up.
Yeah, that's right. If someone tells you suck, do better. Okay, we'll do better. We'll do better. But I think we've had some great guests.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna keep plugging away at this.
Yeah. But now that wraps this episode up.
I believe it does.
Where can they find us?
They can find us at badgetothebone.com. They can also find us on Facebook at badgetothebone.
Also, make sure to shoot us an email at wearebadgetothebone@gmail.com. Like we said, let us know what you think. Maybe you want to be on the show, but reach out and make sure to follow us. But until then, be safe
and be well.
Ain't no